What's up, guys and girls? Welcome to Freedive Passion. The depth season is coming nearer, and it's got me thinking about the idea of specificity and how that relates to training and drills that we come up with. So, if you're interested in coaching with me this year, I'm going to be in Gozo, June and July, offering personal coaching. And over September and October, I'll be in La Ventana, which is in Baja, Mexico. And we're offering a variety of things there. You can have personal coaching, you can have training with safety, and you can find your own buddy and just come and train with us. We have options ranging from $40 a day. So it's totally affordable, great conditions, and just a really spectacular, beautiful place. It's gonna become one of the next hotspots for freediving. So if you're interested in that, head over to the website, check it out. And without further ado, we're gonna start to talk about specificity. So, what is specificity? It's how specific something is to the thing which we're trying to train for. Okay, so in freediving, we're talking about deep diving, yeah? So, the most specific type of thing that we can do is a maximal PB dive. Anything that is not that is lacking to some degree in specificity. It's important for us when we're planning our training session, week, season, that we understand these lacks in specificity, so these lacks don't become a lack in our skill or a lack in our preparation. So it's okay, it's normal, it's important that we do exercises which are not totally specific, because then we can target individual aspects of our freediving. It's also important to understand which things we're missing out with this type of training and make sure that we're covering these bases also. So let me give you some examples to help you understand. One classic CO2 training that people will do is shallow hangs. So you would take yourself down to 5 meters or neutral buoyancy, but however you like to do it, and hang, build up some CO2, and come back up to the surface. This is a nice type of training because you're able to bring up CO2 on a shallow dive. You know, you can just surface whenever you need to, so it gives you maybe a little bit more confidence to go a bit further into edge to breathe. Okay, but it's also lacking quite a lot in specificity, right? We're not moving at all, and of course on a max dive we'll be moving a lot. We're shallow when we feel the edge to breathe, and we have quite full lungs, right? We have plenty of air in the lungs. So these are 3 examples of how it's lacking in specificity. So if I was incorporating a lot of shallow hangs into somebody's training or my own training, I would also have to compensate for these lacks in specificity. One example of how I might compensate would be passion drops, which is a form of variable. If you want to learn more about passion drops, then I have a video dedicated just to that on my channel. So by doing these variable dives, we are entering residual volume, so we're getting used to the feeling of being empty. We are able to go deep without having too much CO2, because by definition, if we're training CO2, our CO2 tolerance is not where it needs to be to do these equivalent depths in the traditional disciplines. And we're moving while experiencing CO2. So we're having to pull ourselves back up or swim ourselves back up, depending on the discipline that you're training. Another example of a type of training which lacks specificity would be surface charge for your mouthfill and then manage the mouthfill as you descend. So this is a really nice type of training because you're able to focus on the mouthfill, focus on your management without being deep or having higher levels of CO2. So it's definitely a useful exercise, but it lacks in specificity. Some examples of how it lacks would be you're not having to charge head down or at depth. You are losing volume very quickly because there's a huge pressure change between 0 and 10 meters. Yeah. So between 0 and 10, you're going to lose 50% of your mouthfill. So you're not getting to practice this first 50% of the mouth fill for very long at all. Okay, and of course you are shallow, so psychologically you don't have to deal with the idea that you're at depth. So if I was going to compensate for these lacks in specificity, I would do shallow drills, training as if it was a deep dive. So let's say if your final charge is at 25 meters for a deep dive, I would have the line set to 30 meters and incorporate some repetitions to this depth, doing the dive exactly as I would for a deep dive and practicing head down charge, making sure I'm able to charge fully, which is a skill most people are lacking in my experience. And I would also put in some passion drops, so you're able to practice managing the mouth fill in real time. Another example would be doing long dynamic dives. If you train this way, again, it's a great way to train. Like, if you can do a 200-meter dynamic, then for sure you can do a 100-meter dive, so long as, you know, CO2 is the only limiting factor, right? So if you can do 200 meters in the pool, a 100-meter dive, CO2 wise, is going to feel easier. So you know you've overcompensated for this thing and you're in a good place. Okay, but it's lacking again in specificity. Why? Most of a dive is going to be below residual volume, and a long dive in dynamic, you've got air in the lungs the whole time. So what would I incorporate into my training? Definitely some empty lung swims in the pool, because this air in the lungs gives you extra stability, which you're not going to have at depth. So you need to learn how to do your monofin technique without this added stability. I would incorporate sprints, because a long dynamic is typically going to require much less effort per meter than a deep dive. In a deep dive, we have extra buoyancy to overcome, or lack of buoyancy to overcome. So you're going to be putting in much more effort. To do 1.2 meters a second in depth, it's going to be more like 1.4, 1.5 meters per second in the pool, which is much faster than what you'll be doing a long dynamic. So I would also add these sprints. Of course, there'll be other things that I add into the training, but the point of these examples is to help you start to understand what you need to think about, right? When it comes to specificity and filling the gaps in specificity around whatever your main training is, yeah? So like, there's always going to be one or two focuses for your preparation. They would be the weaknesses from the last season. But if we only focus on these weaknesses, then we're just going to end up with another weakness, right? This thing will become a strength, but because we've left these other aspects of our diving out, well, they start to fall behind and they become the limiting factor. So no matter what the focus is, it's always important that we don't completely leave anything out of our training. Yeah. Of course, the most specific thing we can do is just deep diving. But if we just deep dive, it's unlikely we're going to get any better as a freediver. There's absolutely a place in your training for less specific exercises. We need to do these less specific exercises to work on individual skills, yeah, and parts of our diving which is a weakness. We just also need to understand what we're lacking with these individual exercises, what we need to do to compensate for the lack in specificity. So the point in this video is to inspire you to start thinking this way when it comes to your training, or at least acknowledge what you're not training when you're doing a certain drill. All right, so I hope you liked the video. If you have any questions, then just comment down below. If you liked it, then share it around. You know, you're probably all part of clubs or whatever. Share it into the Facebook page or your WhatsApp group, whatever you've got. Until next time, guys and girls, take it easy and dive safe.